Hello and welcome to this month's Sailor Moon inspired cake. I'm going to talk for a minute about what led me to come to my decisions for flavors for this Sailor Mars cake while my cat meows in the background. I'm starting by cutting up some plums. This is like 3 months ago. So the reason why I'm using plums is because there are hardly any naturally occurring purple foods out there. There's just like blackberries and plums and stuff. So I thought, okay, plum, that's something I haven't used. So one of her flavors will be plum. And I was trying to think of red things that would go well with that, and I actually came up with ginger. It's not red, but it is kind of a stretch, so work with me, guys. But pickled ginger at sushi places is pink, and ginger is spicy, kind of fiery, right? So I thought, okay, that ginger can be red, because ginger and plum go really, really well together. So this was sort of my thought process. Believe me, before this, I was considering chili chocolate cake, but I realized I'd used chocolate in so many other cakes so far and was going to use it in more, so ginger. So anyway, these plums. This was earlier this summer when plums were in season, and I'm pureeing them in the blender because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make basically a sugarless plum jam. So I pour it into a very wide, shallow skillet just to speed up the process. And as you can see, after a half hour, it looks like that. And after an hour, it looks like that. And then after, let's see, it's a little bit thicker. And then after a while, it becomes even thicker like this. So you just want to cook it down to get a lot of that moisture out, because I'm going to use this as a base for my frosting later. So anyway, back in the present, I'm making a candy. It's a cinnamon sugar glass. And I looked up just on YouTube how to do this because this is my first time doing this. So basically it's sugar and water and corn syrup and a little cream of tartar. And you want to just combine that, stir it until it's combined over low, medium heat. And this took way longer than it was supposed to, and I think my candy thermometer wasn't working very well just because it was so shallow. But anyway, you want to cook it till it's like this, so it's like bubbly all over, and you can test it to see how close it is to being ready by spooning a little bit into some ice water. And then you just check the consistency of the result there, and it was nice and firm and cracky, so this was right. I did want it to caramelize like this, but as you can see, it says 200 degrees, but it should be like at least 300 degrees to be at this stage, so my thermometer was not being accurate. So at this point, I'm adding in the red food coloring because this is going to simulate the fire. I'm going to put this on the top of the cake as a decoration. And so starting with the golden from the caramel and then adding red, and see, that's a pretty nice color. It looks kind of fiery. And then this cookie sheet has cooking spray on it, and so it wasn't really spreading like really well. It was just kind of following with the cooking spray, but that's okay because it didn't have to be a perfect sheet. I just kind of gave up and chilled it in the fridge until it was ready to be turned into candy. So I'm making this ginger cake, which uses fresh ginger. I've been really interested in this recipe. I saw it in The Joy of Cooking years ago, and I had never made it, but I love gingerbread, and it's similar to gingerbread in that it uses ginger and it uses molasses, but it uses much less molasses than gingerbread, and it also does not use any of the other spices like allspice or cinnamon or nutmeg. It's just the fresh ginger, and there is a large quantity of it. So the resulting cake, I can tell you now that I'm speaking from the future when I've had this cake, it is moist, it is delicious, it tastes of ginger. All right, so grate that until you get a half a cup. I did more than that afterwards. So this is an interesting cake. You got some flour and some leavening agents and some salt. Whisk that together, and then brown sugar. It's supposed to be light molasses, but I didn't feel like buying light molasses just for this recipe, so I lightened it with corn syrup and honey as my other sweetener. Honey's expensive, so I didn't go all honey. And an egg. And this is your gloppy wet component before you add in the fresh ginger. A whole half cup of it, juices and all. It got a little fibrous. I would have removed those fibers, like next time I make it, I will. Add red food coloring. I did not add enough red food coloring. As you will see in the future, it'll be like a brownish orange cake. This is butter and water melted together, so it's warm, and that's actually important for the cake. And then I pour the wet into the dry and use a whisk, and then eventually fold it in with a spatula just to make sure it's all smooth except for your lumps of fresh ginger, into a greased and floured 8-inch or 9-inch pan, and bake it until it's done. And now I'm doing a plum infused whipped cream. I was originally going to do a buttercream because it would spread better and look nice, but I went for flavor. I knew whipped cream would go so much better with this. I'm adding more powdered sugar than I ordinarily would because the plum stuff is not sweetened. And now look at this. I had frozen it for a few months until I was ready to use it, but look how nice and thick that is. Like, it's super, super concentrated plum flavor. And I'm just folding that in gently as gently as I can to try to maintain the air bubbles, and adding more, and then adding purple food coloring because, as you can see, it kind of looks pinkish instead of purple. I wanted it to be a nice purple for Sailor Mars's hair and bow because those things are purple. But unfortunately, as you'll see with the cake and then the fire, like that's orange, that fire, and it looks great, like it looks like good fire, and I'm cracking it nicely, but it doesn't go well with purple. Orange and purple is a really horrible color combination, so I regret that. But anyway, it tasted good. Anyway, so there's no exact science here. This is going to feel like an abstract art project, but look at that lovely shard of sharp fire. These things are sharp, actually. I stepped on one of them and cut my foot, so be careful. It's like a pane of glass, but it's really fun to work with. I think I might make more of that in the future for other things. Anyway, you want to slice this cake in half. I was considering thirds, but that would be pretty structurally fragile. So anyway, very carefully cutting this into 2 layers, and drum roll please, so as we reveal what the color of the cake is. It is not, in fact, a nice red like Sailor Mars. It is instead a brownish orange. Yeah, that's like ugly. So that sucked. Add more food coloring next time maybe, and put more whipped cream in the middle layer. I was just going to put it on the top, but it started oozing down the sides, so I frosted the sides anyway. And this is where you become an abstract artist and arrange the cinnamon sugar glass on top like fire. And this was fun. It's just kind of random. There's no rhyme or reason to this. And I just kind of put it. It made the cake difficult to cut afterwards, but it had a neat effect, and it actually looks like fire. So there's my Sailor Mars cake. Look forward to seeing you guys again after I do my Sailor Venus cake, the last cake!